and 11 in the first year of teaching book. The biggest thing that I got out of it that I think is worth sharing to first year teachers or anybody in education is just to let students have a voice in the classroom. A lot of us teachers think that we have all the knowledge and that we're giving it all to the students who are empty, is what the book says, like an empty bank account, and then you've got the banker. It shouldn't be like that. It should be a team learning process, and the teachers need to understand that they're learning just as much as the students are on a daily basis. So going over chapter 8 and kind of the big points, the chapter starts out with two girls that are online bullying each other. They're fighting back and forth, and the school wants to go with their regular discipline plan, which is, suspend them, get them out of school, they can't graduate, all this kind of other stuff that you see associated with schools today in an urban school. And then they kind of, the person who wrote the chapter follows the fact that they do something different, and they try to do this restorative justice process where, and the biggest thing with that is allowing these girls to kind of earn themselves and earn their right back into the school system, but the school system is the one that changes, not the girls. And I think that's the biggest lesson from these chapters, is that the system needs to change and not the students. What can the system do for them? The two students were prepared for this circle, is what they were kind of calling it, and it to me, in my profession, it reminded me of like an IEP meeting. So they had these girls that had to kind of come together, and a bunch of adults were involved in this process, a bunch of people who knew these girls personally, and that way these girls can kind of let out their emotions and say why they're frustrated, but then learn from it. And then at the same time, the school is doing a better job at communicating and keeping people in school, because if the students are sent home, the students are suspended, they're expelled, they're not learning what they need to learn, and they're not going to the college that they want to go to. So the key to this is keeping them in school, and what can we do for them? So they put together this meeting, and a bunch of people were able to come and kind of give their input. I'm disappointed, I expect this. The students were able to say why they're frustrated. And the big thing, that we learned from this meeting is that it was a safe space for the girls. They felt safe. The participants were prepared. They had a lot of information to share. The girls were prepared. There was an action plan. What are we going to do from this point forward so that this doesn't happen again, and to make sure that these girls are successful in school and they don't worry about the stuff that got them in trouble in the first place? This reminded me of an IEP with goals. So in special education, when you have an IEP, you have goals and you have things that you're going to work towards after that meeting. Same thing with this circle process. And then rather than suspending these students, they were keeping them in school, and that's our goal. So those were some of the things that were good. Some of the things that were not so good was the communication. Some of the adults couldn't be there, couldn't communicate, couldn't make it to the second meeting. The time, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort for people to do this, and I don't know how many schools are going to get to jump on board with this, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of extra time from our teachers and our administration. And then the accountability. Who's going to hold these students accountable for their follow-up plan? Who's going to make sure that they keep doing what they're doing? And again, it related to my teaching, it makes me think of IEP meetings. Who's going to make sure that the kids are meeting their goals, they're getting their accommodations in the classroom? It all comes back to us adults. It's what can we do for the students and not what can they do. The next chapter kind of just talked about progressive discipline plans, meaning not so much telling these students to sit down and be quiet, but to make sure that you embrace what they bring to the classroom, because a lot of students have so much to bring and have come from so many different backgrounds. If you take that away from them, then you're not really learning as a teacher, and you're not getting what you need out of them, because they feel like they're just following an order, and that's not what we want from our kids. Obviously, classroom control is essential to having a successful classroom. How can you control your students? But at the same time, you don't want it to be this strict process where they can't learn. They need to be able to let out their emotions and be who they are. So it kind of just goes over different warnings you can give to the students, different things you can do in the classroom, what's successful and what's not. The biggest thing that students kind of shared with this first-year teacher was the fact that they felt like warnings were the best way to get through to them, rather than just jumping to something and calling home or sending them to the counselor. If you give them a warning, if you just tell them what's upsetting you, then a lot of times they can kind of do something different. And it's hard because some teachers have different boundaries than other teachers, and I think that's the biggest thing that we have to balance as teachers is Why are we getting the kids in trouble in one class and in another class they can do that? It's hard. We got to be consistent. And then finally, that last chapter was all about basically, teaching in an urban environment, and how are you going to be the most successful in that environment. And you need to improve your own practice. Research is key. If you're going to be a first year, second year, third year teacher, all the way up, I think, until you retire, research is important. If we're not evolving as teachers each day through our practice, then we're failing the kids. And so I think the biggest thing that this chapter was trying to stress is that even though it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, we as teachers owe it to the students to truly research our practice to make sure we're doing the best for them. They deserve it. And finally, view problems in the classroom as possibilities with research. So you encounter a problem, you're having an issue with a student, you're having an issue with a group of students, research it, practice something, create something that you can apply in your classroom, learn from it, and then move on. Don't just give up. Don't say that these kids can't do it. Don't say that the kids are difficult these days. That's not fair. These kids are kids, but it's our job to make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure that they succeed in the classroom. It's our responsibility as teachers. So once again, overall, with these three chapters, the biggest thing that I got from it is make sure students are allowed to have their voice. Make sure that you get all their point of views, and make sure you're consistent with your discipline. Make sure that you are progressive with your discipline, and make sure that you're keeping kids in school. It's not going to benefit anybody if we're just sending them out, sending them home, sending them to the counselor. Take care of it in your classroom. Research to find better methods. Improve yourself, and you will see a change in your students. It's not about what they can change. It's about what you can change. Thank you.